This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
Welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday, the pod that fearlessly chats about all things affecting us ladies who are 40 plus fabulous.
Ooh, and the guys who want to know what we think.
Them too. I'm Janet Evans, advertising creative.
And I'm Jenny Woodhouse, a semi-retired social worker.
In other words, you're busier than ever. We're J&J and we're super thrilled you're with us for She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Well, gorgeous. Have you ever broken the law?
Well, do you mean like going 65 kilometres an hour in a 60k zone? Or do you mean...
No, I thought of something more dramatic than that,
No.
Poison someone with mushrooms or...
Not that I'm aware of. No.
No?
So
Okay.
I'll say a qualified no.
Not that
what
you're
about you?
aware of.
Not
right.
that I'm aware of.
Well, I did shoplift when I was a teenager. I remember I stole a lip gloss.
Did you get caught?
I just couldn't be bothered waiting for the queue for the cash register. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
And I think they were having a bit of a chat behind the counter and I was just like, I can't deal. This is my payment for having to wait.
Okay. And how did you go with that, within yourself, morally?
Well, I'm still recovering from it, psychologically.
I can talk you through that. Actually.
Yeah.
We can do that. Bit of counselling.
But I don't think that really qualifies in a big way. Did you know that under criminal law in Australia and many other countries too, there's the presumption of innocence. So people are presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt in courts of law. But I was wondering, how reasonable is reasonable doubt? Like, what exactly does that mean?
And whose reason? Yes.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Like, it is sort of a,
Yeah.
Because, in a case like Chris Dawson, who was convicted in 2022 of murdering his wife Lynette in 1982, where there's only circumstantial evidence, like they never found her body, for example, how can you prove a murder's happened,
Yes.
when there's no body?
Yes. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Well, I think our next guest might be able to. We're very honoured to have on the bench in the Hope Studios, and she's not even wearing a big white wig. She's the amazing Professor Michele Ruyters, who is Associate Dean of Criminology and Justice Studies at RMIT, that's the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and she's the founder and director of the Criminal Case Review Project. And her practice and research interests are in wrongful convictions and lived experiences of miscarriages of justice.
Oh, my goodness. Welcome.
Wow, I'm just into cooking and stuff like that, but this sounds very impressive. And so, Michele Ruyters, welcome to She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on, Janet and Jenny.
Thank you for joining us.
So, gorgeous, you also founded and direct what's called the Bridge of Hope Innocence Initiative as part of RMIT. So tell us why you set that up and what you guys do.
That's probably one of the easiest questions I've ever been asked, and it goes back quite a long time. I was teaching evidence law to undergraduate students, and I think it was probably late 1990s or early 2000s. And I always, as teachers do, we're always looking for video material, to bring the concepts alive for students. And we were looking at the difficulties of identification evidence because there are a lot of problems associated with that. And I came across a documentary, and it just happened to be about the American Innocence Project. And it was, I think it was the first case that they did, and they were successful in establishing that this man who had been in prison for quite a long time was not guilty of the rape for which he'd been convicted. And this was one of the first cases in which they were able to retest DNA to conclusively prove that this was not him. And I remember thinking at the time, it was just like the penny dropped, or, whatever the expression is, that's what I want to do. When I was approached by a charity, the Bridge of Hope Foundation, about 11 12 years ago to set one up at RMIT, as you can imagine, I just jumped at the opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Wow. So what did you take ideas from what they'd done in the States and apply those to your initiative? Like, what do you guys actually do?
So we do operate a little bit differently. We found out that we can't be the same as the United States because we don't have the same problems. We don't have the death penalty, for example, so we don't have that big pool of cases where DNA can actually be conclusively used to prove someone's innocent. And we don't have the same problems with the criminal justice system that they do. A lot of their officials, like prosecutors, judges, they're elected. So there's a motivation there for, whatever you might want to call it, wrongdoing or when things don't quite go according to plan. But here, most of ours are their employees. Our prosecutors are certainly not elected. So you don't have the same motivations for getting that strike rate, for getting the 100% conviction rate.
Okay.
So we found out, and we also wanted to approach things very differently because most projects start at the trial and say, okay, what went wrong there and how can we fix it moving forward? What we do is we go right back to the beginning and we investigate the case from the very beginning, even before the crime occurred, to see what actually happened. Who didn't the police talk to? Did they miss someone? Did they miss a piece of evidence? And then start heading down another path that perhaps the police had overlooked.
Okay. So how can you identify from a case that it's a wrongful conviction? How can you be sure?
We can never be sure. And I would have to say there's probably only 2 cases that we have where I would go 100%, I would, swear on anything that this person is not guilty. No, probably 3. But many other cases where I would say the evidence doesn't stack up. Or what the jury got to see, what the court got to see, certainly wasn't the whole story. And that's a big problem.
And so how does it then happen that somebody gets wrongfully convicted?
Well, it happens because it's up to people. So you have either a group of people or, as in New South Wales, you can have judge-alone trials. That fact finder is making a decision based on the material that's presented to them. So the first thing to keep in mind is that is never everything that is to be known about the case and not necessarily everything that's relevant about the case. It's what has filtered through. It's what the police have decided is relevant for moving a prosecution forward, and it's what the prosecution have decided to share with the defence because the prosecution have an obligation to disclose their case to the defence, so they're not ambushed at trial.
Right.
And so it's a very curated process because people are making decisions about, while they might have the best interests of justice in mind, it's human nature to say, well, we think this is the only information that's relevant because it's going to make our conviction. So they're not thinking with the defendant's hat on and thinking, well, maybe that piece of information could lead to an alternative path that could potentially prove that this person was innocent. Like the witnesses at a crime scene. I'll give you a really good example of one of the cases we're looking at, and one I am 100% sure that this person didn't do it, simply because the person who did do it has been on media and talked about it.
Confessed it.
Right.
Yeah. And
that'll do it.
In this case, this happened at a party, and there were probably a couple of hundred people there. There were drugs involved, there was alcohol, and a fight had broken out just before this person was killed. 11 police stations attended this scene, not to deal with what they thought was a potential death, but to deal with the assaults that had broken out. So you can imagine, sirens are blaring. This is the mid-2000s. It's essentially a rave, and people are going, diving out of every exit they possibly can, and they will never be found again. So the only witnesses that the police could talk to are the ones who had actually left at the crime scene.
Oops.
And even those, so they were left outside talking to each other. And even when they were down at the police station, they were all talking to each other outside. So how can you be sure that the memory of what they saw was their actual original memory, or it didn't become contaminated by, oh, did you see that guy with the, oh, yeah, I saw that guy. And then it becomes their memory of what they saw. And that is really problematic. So, and in this case, because we got publicity out of it, we had people contacting us saying, I was there.
Right.
But they hadn't spoken to the police.
Right.
Right. And so they kind of arrested someone based on all of this kind of misinformation. That person went to trial and their defence, we imagine, didn't... Well, how did the prosecution prove that they'd done it? Was it just based on eyewitnesses?
It was based on eyewitness evidence.
Yeah.
And there was a racial aspect to this. So the crime happened in a really small environment where there was low lighting. And there were 4 people of African descent on this small area, and the rest of the witnesses were white. And look, we've got the luxury of looking back and having time, and I've got lots of resources for students, so we can see the mistakes. And you could see when you look at the trial transcript that the witnesses were getting the facial descriptions, hair, appearance of all of the black witnesses completely confused. They just morphed into the one person. But bear in mind, for the witnesses themselves, it was really low lighting. They were probably drunk. In fact, they had quite a bit to drink.
Yes. Yeah.
But it really did turn into a case of black versus white, because the black witnesses who were there said, well, not only can we tell the difference between the people in this area, but we know him. He's a friend of ours. And we're telling you, it's not that guy, it's the other guy. But all the witnesses wore black and blue. All the white witnesses said, no, sorry, it was the person that we were helping out.
Wow. So
and that's very convincing for a jury.
Yes, absolutely. Like, what else have they got to go on?
Yeah.
So my question then is, given that the police will always filter out some pieces of evidence and not others, and then it's a curated process, as you say, why is it not the case that everyone who says they're innocent may then be innocent?
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking, whenever I go into a prison to visit a prisoner, and I'm speaking to a correctional prison guard, without fail, knowing I come from an Innocence project, they will always say, oh, they all think they're innocent in here. So it just reminded me of that.
It's understandable, right?
It is understandable.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really hard to... So what we do is we say, is there something problematic here? We look to see, is there potentially material that wasn't disclosed? And that is very, very common. Are there witnesses that the police didn't speak to that we can speak to? If there are paths that we can follow and potentially find out more about what happened, then we'll do that. But very often we'll say, look, I'm sorry, this leads nowhere. There is no way to factually, because what we want to do, our aim, and we'll only take cases in which we can do that, is to factually prove that the person is innocent. We don't want to be making legal arguments. We're only able to say, yes, you've got an alibi witness, or yes, there's DNA to be retested, or this witness lied, and we can prove that that witness lied.
Wow. So it has to be facts that you're working with.
So
Right.
it can't just be someone coming up and saying, I was there too and I saw it and this is my memory.
Well, that does happen sometimes, and in quite a few cases that we have, that evidence is either overlooked or the defence have chosen not to use it because they might think there's a credibility issue there. So, a lot of cases can also depend on the strategy that the defence takes at trial. And that's not to criticise the defence. It's most criminal cases are legally aided. They get a very short period of time to look at material, and they will just choose the best strategy that they can see on the material that they've got. And they've had time to read.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So if you take, for example, let's say you've got a drug trafficking case where there's lots of burner phones and telephone intercepts on all of those burner phones, and you've got listening devices, you can end up with thousands and thousands of hours of recordings. No one's listening to that.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Gorgeous. We first came across you in a fantastic documentary called Exposed, The Case of Kelly Lane. And this was a really, really intriguing case where a woman called Kelly Lane, who's from Sydney, was convicted of murdering her 2-day-old daughter, Tegan, even though there was no body, no evidence of a murder, no CCTV back in the day, no witnesses, no confession, but she was found guilty beyond reasonable doubt and is serving her full 18-year sentence. So why did you and the Innocence Initiative first become interested in her case? What were your concerns about this case?
They were fairly immediate. We got the case it's almost coming up to a 10-year anniversary in September 2015, and I remember it well because a truck had arrived. It came down from Sydney with her files. Her files take up a whole wall.
A truck.
A truck. And my students were out in the street in the rain bringing all of these boxes and boxes. And to give you an idea of how much there was, it took me a month working full-time to sort them.
Wow.
Oh, goodness.
Because there was so much. And the lawyers were very, very good. It's rare that we get pretty much everything.
Wow.
But once we sat down to have a look at it, like our first question was, okay, where's the evidence?
Yeah.
I don't see any evidence. And that was the big puzzle. Like, how could the jury convict if there was no evidence of a death, no evidence of any harm? There was no evidence of motive, even though the prosecution tried to manufacture one. There was no forensic evidence that anything had happened. There was no witness evidence. There was nothing. There was no circumstantial evidence at all.
So how did the jury arrive at their verdict, do you think?
I think it's probably simplistic, but probably true to say that it was a very gendered response, in the same way as Linda Chamberlain.
Yes.
Okay.
Something has happened to this baby. There's a mother involved. She's got a history of disposing of her children through fostering, through adoption. Yeah. So for them, I think the logic was, okay, she just took the next step and accepted on that basis. And also I think there was a lot of probably feeling about, her sexual history, that she clearly had a lot of partners. Each child, I think, maybe the first two were with the same, but, each child or potential birth was with a different partner.
Right.
And it's hard not to, there are really strong parallels between her and Lindy Chamberlain. And that they made a lot of the fact that she was at a wedding 3 days after she gave birth in a white suit. And, it was how she behaved afterwards, I think, had a lot to do with that. And I believe that the former Director of Public Prosecutions, I think he's on record of saying that he had a decision at that time to choose to prosecute Chris Dawson or Kelly Lane, because both involved missing bodies with virtually no evidence.
Yeah. And
he chose Kelly Lane because it probably was the easier path to a conviction.
Oh, goodness me.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of Linda Chamberlain being so criticised for smiling or not smiling. Yeah. Or
her
not
demeanour.
Yeah, her demeanour. So it's a moral decision in a sense, is it?
I think so. The lies, Kelly did tell a lot of lies and the prosecution made a lot of that. I think they counted them to say there were 101 lies.
Oh.
And to suggest that she clearly had something to hide. That showed what they call consciousness of guilt.
Ah, yes,
but
okay.
I don't know if you have children, but the lies my children have told, when there was no need to tell a lie.
Absolutely.
And it snowballed.
Yes.
Right. Yes. But also, she was quite young, wasn't she? So if you were embarrassed a bit about, like, a history that you'd had, you kind of would tell lies, wouldn't you?
And in the public eye and, being watched from everywhere.
It was... in the conversations I had with her, it was quite interesting because one of them, I think it might have been Tegan, she celebrated her birthday. So Kelly was alone in hospital giving birth, surrounded by no one, and it was her birthday. And she was still like a teenager. As you saw in Exposed, we got the impression that she hid it really successfully from all of her friends, but as it's turned out, they were aware. Her coach was aware. So no one reached out. No one said, hey, are you struggling? Is there something happening to you?
Yeah, right.
And you would have also seen her partner with the births that were terminated, how traumatised she was by that. So when you think of it, so the jury perhaps looked at, okay, she's just progressively increasing the ways in which she's disposing of her children.
Right.
But you look at it this way, she was so traumatised by the terminations that she chose fostering. And she found that so difficult that when the opportunity came to give the child to its natural parent, she jumped at it. Because she knew fostering and she knew adoption was open to her. So why would she need to? So it's the flip side.
There's always a different explanation. But one thing that I found really interesting about the documentary talking about the defence case was that they had the opportunity, because apparently the prosecution attached perjury charges to the murder charge, and these related to the lies she'd told about the adoptions of the girl or the baby after Tegan and the one before Tegan that were both adopted out. She'd lied about, all the details, who the dad was, where she lived, all that stuff. But the judge in the case had said to the defence, well, you have the option to get these perjury charges off. They don't need to be connected to murder. They've got nothing to do with it. But they chose to keep them in. And I always thought, why on earth did they make that decision? Because, and Michelle, I know you can't answer this because you weren't the defence, but obviously that's just going to discredit your own client, surely.
You would think so.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the conclusion we would reach now. But in the heat of the moment, I think it's really difficult to criticise anything that a legally aided lawyer does with little time to prepare, and they would always make the best decision they can in the circumstances. And what a lot of people don't know is that he was the only person to take the case. I've still got a news article on my wall, and I can't remember how many times there was a judge before Anthony Wheely who was doing all the pre-trial stuff and getting so impatient with the defence because no barrister would pick up the case because it was clearly going to lock them in for months. It was legally aided. And, so someone finally stepped up to take it. So, some kudos there, I think. But it's really hard to criticise decisions made in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, right.
That is true.
It's easy for us to do it now.
Yeah. But, watching that documentary, I was just like, oh, man, why did you do that? Because if I was on the jury, I would just think, oh, well, she just lies all the time. So obviously she's lying about this very far-fetched story about the natural father coming and taking the child. It just kind of, you just kind of go, oh, why'd you do that?
Yeah. Another thing that I think probably is not commonly known is that this idea of disclosure, the prosecution continued to disclose during the trial right up until the last couple of weeks. So not only is the defence got all this material they have no time to look at, more material is coming in virtually daily because they were not ready to run. The lead police investigator said, we don't have a case yet, and they only went ahead because of the Crown prosecutor making that decision to run, despite the fact that they were still investigating the case, still talking to witnesses, and still doing their searches.
Wow. Can you do that? Is it allowed normally in a court case?
No, it's called late disclosure and it's controlled. The judge controls this. But, it does depend on the defence becoming proactive and saying, look, you can't allow this in because it's far too late to receive this evidence and for us to deal with it.
So did this happen, have the laws changed or was it that the case in Kelly Lane's time as well that the judge could have stopped it or?
Well, the judge will make decisions based on applications by the parties.
Right.
So we don't have all of the discussions that took place in between. So when the jury's out of the room, we don't have transcripts of all of those discussions. Right. And I imagine they were long and detailed.
Right.
Yeah, when they're getting late material. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So you were obviously very convinced that she was wrongfully convicted. What did you and your team do for her?
Oh, it's been a long time. One of the first things we did was we realised that the police had never, so that there were all of these andromoses that they had found, and they'd taken photos of them, but we discovered that they'd never actually shown them to Kelly.
Oh, okay.
So we did that. We also used all the information that Kelly provided us about his background. My students, it was pretty much, when I say it's 10 years, we had probably 100 students look at this case. So it's a lot of hours' work. And one job, one semester, was go to every high school Facebook page in the region around, like Western Sydney and outside, and download all of the, Facebook pages of the years that this person might have been at that school. Can you imagine how many we got?
Right.
And I ended up getting stopped at the prison for a logical reason. So I was taking them into seizure. It was this high, like it was so high. And
that's high.
It was high.
Yes.
And we did get stopped because, and they were right, I was bringing images of children into a prison.
Oh, okay.
And I had not thought about it, but the prison was actually quite good, and in the end, we were allowed to give it to Kelly on a USB, which the prison received, and then they showed it to her. And they weren't successful, but we were able to narrow features down and say, yeah, this person looks quite like.
Okay. And was it Morris or Norris?
Norris.
Right. Because in the documentary, she says, oh, actually, I'm not sure. Or she's something like that.
She's not sure. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I've had lengthy relationships with people. I don't know their surname.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah.
It wasn't what I was interested in.
Yes.
Yeah. Like us, for example. You know us as Jenny and Janet, and you don't know our surnames.
No, I don't know.
We know yours because we had to find you, but...
Okay.
So with a circumstantial case, and you're interested in that case, what does it take to actually convict someone with a circumstantial case if, for example, motive can't be taken into consideration?
Well, I mean, there was a suggestion of motive. The motive that the Crown was putting up, that she did this because she wanted to maintain her party life, because she had Olympic ambitions and, basically wanted to maintain her lifestyle, wanted to be a teacher. They did emphasise those aspects, but really the Olympic ambition motive fell away pretty quickly because she was never in contention for that. It just wasn't something that she was ever going to be selected for, even though it was really important for her. So the prosecutor had basically put it together, I think, like a puzzle, and said this is what we say, these are the missing pieces, and just kind of put them all into position and presented it as a completed puzzle or picture to the jury. There was some discussion about whether or not the prosecution was reversing the onus of proof and putting it on Kelly. And I think that's what the public is doing as well. Like, if you're innocent, show us the baby. Bring us Andrew Norris or whoever it is, give us more information.
It's really interesting because, she didn't appear in the witness box herself. And it seems like most cases of murder investigations, the defendant doesn't appear. Why is that? I've often wondered about that.
I believe it's a legal aid policy, statewide. Mm-hmm. Usually, once again, it's a strategic decision. Some people do not present well. My impression, everyone is following the Aaron Patterson case.
Yeah, that's right.
I do believe that is not a legal aid case, so there's a bit more control there. And you can see in the way it's been covered in the media, it's really shifting the discussion.
Yes,
it certainly
very
is.
much,
it really is. And so many times, many times, we have looked at a case and said we needed to hear from that person. So in the case I was talking to you about, with that young man who was convicted of murder, he didn't give evidence and he didn't speak to the police at all. So he kept, his right to silence. The first time we were able to hear his story was when I drove up to Beechworth to visit him in prison and then heard it for the first time. And then you realise there are different ways of looking at things. So this fight situation that was described, it was described by all the white witnesses as these three guys, and this person was a young boxer. In fact, he was heading up the next day to Queensland to go to a boxing camp for the Commonwealth Games. He was,
oh, wow.
Yeah, he was.
So that was his training, drugs and alcohol.
No, he didn't drink. He didn't.
Oh, I see.
Absolutely didn't drink. And he was 17 at the time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good.
Yes.
And so in this case, but because he was a boxer and he's throwing out like a flashy leg, kick here and there, it looked kind of intimidating. So it sounds really intimidating, these three boys, and one of them certainly was very drunk. And then you hear it from his perspective. He was 65 kilos and his friend's not much more. He was thin as a rag. He's a young boy. They were pretty much the only black people in a warehouse full of big white dudes, as they put it. And for them, it was 30 or 40 white people, or, men, or not necessarily white people, but a group of people coming at them angry because his friend had actually started the fight and he was trying to get his friend out.
Okay.
So this wall of people came towards him. They were scared, they were intimidated, just wanted to get out. And I think he did like a fancy axe kick and hit a light, and that looked like it was so much more. But I had no idea, because when you read it, it's so aggressive. He was like a maniac. He was doing this, this and this. Yeah. And all the kid was trying to do was get out and get to safety. So completely different perspective.
My goodness. So why would someone be told to keep quiet? Why take up that offer of, remaining silent?
Because you can't control what they say. And they might shoot themselves in the foot. So if you have a strategy, they might completely shoot it down in flames.
Yeah,
they
right.
might not appear credible. They might not be convincing. Some people who are honest, fantastic people can actually sound pretty cagey, when they're under pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of the way you respond.
By the time this goes to air, the Erin Patterson case will probably be closed and we'll have a verdict one way or the other. But at the moment, it's very much up in the air. I have to say, I've been following it really closely because I love true crime. But also, it's such an intriguing, killing people with a beef Wellington, death cap mushroom lunch. I mean, it's quite bizarre.
And how do you feel about it, Janet?
But get there. I mean, I thought she was completely guilty. You don't accidentally poison someone with death cap mushrooms. You don't accidentally forage for them. You don't accidentally store them in your kitchen with the rest of your mushrooms and then make them into a beef Wellington. Then she appeared on the stand, and suddenly I'm thinking, actually, she is a very compelling witness, which I imagine her lawyer and her would have discussed and decided that was a really good move for them.
Yeah. So have you come to a conclusion yet, Janet?
Now I don't know. I'm really glad I'm not on that jury.
Oh, yes.
What do you think, Michelle? What do you think? We want your personal opinion here.
I'm holding in one of the, as I said, it's always a curated view of the case. And one of the attributes we really try to sort of instill in our students is about being objective. So we can't, once or twice I have been kind of emotional and advocated, but usually I will be as remote and objective as I can, because if we get invested in the case, we risk having the same tunnel vision, and I will only look for innocence, and I will only, I'll make the same mistakes that the police do and the prosecution do, and that's not helping anyone. And at the end of the day, even if we can't help someone, what we can say is that we tested the system and, we did as much as we can, and, perhaps this is all that can be done in this case.
So do you actually compile a case for the innocence of that person that you think is genuinely innocent, and who do you present that case to? What are your next steps?
Well, it depends on what options they already have. So sometimes we're already working with lawyers, so they might have asked us to help out with a bit of research on the case. We have up to 14 or 15 students who are working 4 days a week for a semester. So that's a lot of man hours. We can offer that help to lawyers. As a resource, it's fantastic. If we have enough of a case, then ideally we'll go to a lawyer and say, can you take this on? Okay. The difficulty, we wouldn't want to go to anyone unless we had all the material. And it's really hard, because when people come to us, we are their last hope. And some of the cases we've got are 2-3 decades old, so the resources have gone. So the key witness that you need has died or has left the jurisdiction or just simply can't be found. And that's happened in several cases where they've just disappeared. So we can't move, and then we can't take it to trial. In some cases, I'll give you another example. In one case that we really believe that this young woman did not understand anything that was said at her interview with the police because she was given the wrong interpreter. And we were looking, and we wanted to be able to conclusively prove that by having the interview reinterpreted. And the cheapest quote we got for doing that was $30,000.
What? Okay.
Because it has to be broken down. We'd have to separate the voice of the interpreter, the police, and this person. So these things can hold us back.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That would hold you back.
So ultimately, the ideal would be a retrial, or can people just appeal a conviction? How does that work?
Well, in Victoria and most states now in Australia, you can have second and further appeals. There's new legislation. On your first appeal, most people will have that open to them. Most of them seem to apply out of time, and then they have to apply for leave to appeal out of time, and they may not get that. The second right of appeal is really quite narrow indeed, and I think we've only had 3 successful cases. Tony Mockbell was one of those early on. I think it was Tony Mockbell. I could be wrong. And so it's a very narrow funnel, and that's deliberately so. You can still petition the Attorney General. It's a petition of mercy, and ask for the case to be reviewed. In New South Wales, you have the judicial inquiry.
Okay.
So there are options at post-conviction, but you've got to get it there, and you have to have, very persuasive material, I think,
So
to get it across.
you could appeal 2 or 3 or 4 times.
In the states that have second and subsequent appeal legislation, yes, you can, but it's going to narrow quite
Yes, as you go on.
Yeah,
I get.
And in the case of the guy who was convicted of killing the boxer, who was convicted of killing that guy, what were you able to do for him?
In the end, unfortunately, not much other than we were able to help in that, we took on his case. And so we were able to put a lot of time and effort into that. We did a lot of media, and we were very fortunate in that the person who has assumed responsibility came to talk to us, has spoken to media, and was very vocal in doing that. And that material then formed part of the case for a second appeal. So this person lost his first appeal while he was in prison, had an unsuccessful application to appeal to the High Court. And it was after that he came to us. So that's one of our oldest cases from 2014. Then we'd lodged a petition of mercy. I believe that was withdrawn when his new solicitors launched the second appeal. That was unsuccessful, believe it or not, even though the person who has accepted responsibility on the project, on 60 Minutes, on ABC, and it's probably best for people to have a look at the judgment to understand the reasons why, and then a subsequent application to the High Court for leave was refused. So he's pretty much done all he can. In a case, I've not seen anything more conclusive, to be honest. Yeah.
Goodness. Michelle, after all of that, do you think Australia has a good justice system?
I think we have the good bare bones of a justice system. It's just that there's not enough time and resources at each level. So legal aid is in crisis across the country. They can't keep staff, and I think this is a huge problem in the Northern Territory at the moment. But on the other side, most prosecution bodies, if you Google it, you'll find they are also in crisis, and they are all having a lot of problem getting through their caseloads. So if they're not funded, if they don't have enough people to, spend on the cases, or the resources to spend on the cases, how are they going to pick up any misdirection or mistakes that the police might have made in, giving them information? And, and the courts are also under pressure. But the police themselves are in a funding crisis. So if you can Google this Nan Patterson case, there was, I kept it to show my students, there was a little clip where the police were being cross-examined about listening device recordings or telephone intercept recordings, and they were only for a small period. The policeman was asked why, and the answer was, we didn't have enough money to transcribe the other ones.
Wow. Okay.
So,
my goodness.
I don't know if it was relevant to the case, but so everyone is suffering a shortfall. So when police don't disclose it, I'm not necessarily saying it's something sinister. They're always moving to the next homicide, the next case. Like if this one looks like it's open and shut, great, give it to the Crown, and then we'll go and work on our next case because we've got a big caseload as well.
Yeah, you don't kind of imagine that behind the scenes, do you? No. Like you just think, how did that go so horribly wrong? Or, you just see the top line of it. We don't see the workings, the machinations underneath. But
and we all think that we're a very good judge. Character,
and that we have a terrific legal system. And
we think personally we're a judge of character.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
so I could have done a better job than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's in it for the students who get to work with you, Michelle? I imagine everybody's clamouring to do that.
Yeah, we just finished selecting for the next semester, which is always interesting.
Wow.
It's great for them on a lot of levels because we run as a workplace. So it gives students that work integrated learning experience, that connection to industry, which is really useful to them. And practically they get to see the inside of the system. They get to see what happens in the background, all the things that I've been talking to you about. Most people would have no idea, including, law students or criminology students. So that's really great for them. But it's also what we describe as, quite transformative because they get to see things through the eyes of the people who are living it. So can you imagine, I imagine a lot of people have doubt about the cases that we say, we're lobbying for someone because they're innocent. But imagine you are actually innocent and you have no way of getting people to understand that, to accept that this is actually factual, that the weight of evidence seems to be against you, but you didn't do it and you have no way of proving that you didn't do it. And
you shouldn't have to because you're innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yes, but I mean, the jury can accept the material that's put in front of them, and the material that's put in front of them will be used in a particular way. So when you look at the closing addresses in the Ern Patterson case, you will see how they are each drawing differently on the material that's been presented, presenting very polar opposite views of the same information. She lied not because she was trying to hide a crime. She lied because she panicked and she didn't know what to do. I think we've all done
terrified.
Like just get the evidence.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Shoplifting. But what you were saying about not letting your personal feelings get in the way, how is that possible? I just feel like that's not possible. If you're on a jury, just the look of someone or,
Oh, you mean from a jury's perspective?
Yeah, or just anyone judging a case. Like,
yes. Or do they remind you of your,
I mean, even if you're reminded on a sort of
who you can't
mind
stand
level, you can't be biased and this and that, you would still have that subjectivity, wouldn't you?
Yes, and you'd remember different parts of the evidence too.
Yeah. And the jury sees horrible things. So, and particularly in Kelly's case, obviously there was no physical evidence. But in cases involving children where they are, looking at all of the images and what happened, and there are worse situations and worse photos to be looking at, that's really hard. Yes.
Yeah, it's very confronting. I mean, the thing is about that is that you want someone to be held accountable for that. And who else is there but that person who's in the dock accused of that crime?
Well, someone is accountable for it. It's just,
who is it? It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's right.
So what would you regard as a success for the initiative?
For you?
Success would be if we actually got someone exonerated. It sounds, I must have, when I saw that documentary all those years ago, I was going, that looks so easy. You look at a case, it's DNA, you get retested, yay. And it's not like, in the case of this boxer and Kelly Lane's case, like it's 10 years plus. And we're still working on it. Still going through. So success for me is, have we done everything we possibly can? Have we pursued every possible avenue we can within our limitations? And because ideally what I would like to do, even if we can't do any more, is be able to package, this is what we do, is package it up and say, this is what we've got. And we can't help you anymore, but, perhaps a lawyer or someone else can.
Yeah. And is that what drives you, that passion for justice?
It's funny, every time I get asked this, I tear up. It's just, I've been asked this on media a few times and I just tear up every single time.
We love you tearing up, Michelle.
She's tearing up right now.
She's tearing up right now.
I am. It's because of the people involved. There's also the families on the other side. And you can see there's a lot of cases where they can get angry with organisations like us because I guess from their perspective, we're making the anguish continue because we're keeping it alive. Right. Probably that's a large reason why I need to stay objective is because I'm thinking of it from the perspective of the person who has that sense of drowning, that if you truly are innocent. But on the other hand, it's the family who deserve, for this to be over for them and not be put through anymore and wanting to balance both worlds. That's really hard.
I imagine that's a bit impossible.
Yeah.
Can't really do that.
And so are you going to keep going, Michelle? Are you got any plans to change direction, for example?
No.
The guilty initiative?
No, we are, we're trying to expand. So the criminal case review project that we have is for non-innocent cases.
Yep.
But it's where there's something procedurally very wrong.
Oh.
Yeah, so where something went wrong somewhere in the process. Perhaps this person had a mental illness that wasn't noticed at the time. It may not be that we can do anything with it, but we can certainly investigate all the options and give that to the person as well. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And so, Michele, if someone wants to work with you, or, someone wants to help the initiative somehow, how should they go about it?
I would love to say just call us, but it's because we're at a university, we have tried this before, and I guess it's not really as successful as we would like because it's a university, you have to have secure access. We have to have police checks because everything's digitised. If you're coming onto campus, then you have to be staffed to get a card to come in, and these processes have kind of defeated us for a while. But I mean, that is the aim. We've had so many queries and offers of people to help, but honestly, a lot of it is just grunt work. It's, can you please scan these 10 boxes of Richard, because that's really going to help us.
Wow.
And no one wants to do that. They want to be in there looking at the files.
Yes.
Judge, jury, all that kind of thing.
What about if somebody has someone they love in prison that they believe is innocent? How do they actually contact you? Can they do that?
They can definitely contact me. I take calls. My mobile's public. I get calls quite often. I sat down with someone for an hour yesterday in exactly that kind of situation.
Right.
Wow. Yeah. Is that a burner phone? Or?
No, it's my mobile phone. Never had a problem. It's my mobile phone. It's because people have to be able to contact you, and sometimes they just need someone to talk to. And for that person, for the families, I think what we also offer, and I do remember in the case of this young boxer, and he's told me about it before, when he lost his application for leave to appeal to the High Court the first time, like he was at the bottom of, where he was. And then I drove up to see him, and he said that psychological lift, it just turned it for him. And
that's so good.
If that's what we can do, in the interim as well. And having someone believe in you is often the most important thing.
Absolutely.
To use a boxing analogy, in your corner.
In your corner. Yeah.
That's great.
Well done, Janet.
I think, that is a success, in my opinion.
Yes, that's right.
Just even for them to know that, that someone believes in you.
And and I haven't completely lost control of the whole thing because someone's out there fighting for me.
Gee, I mean, this whole discussion, Michele, makes me think I never, ever want to go into a court case.
No.
Because I'm not sure that justice would be done. That's a pretty, strong statement.
Because you don't believe that you would be able to make a decision?
I think that in, understanding that things are curated and you might not have the best defence team behind you and they might make mistakes and, it could happen. You could be visiting me in jail. We could do the podcast from jail. What do you think?
Do that.
Would you do that?
I would do that for you, Janet. Absolutely.
Well, Michele, thank you so much. We really, really want to thank you for shedding a light on this whole area, which is such a sort of legal minefield for most people. We just don't understand what goes on behind the scenes. Yeah, absolutely. And just the last thing we would like to say is, could you please send your 10 grand invoice to Hope 103.2? Would that be all right?
I wish.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Gorgi, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this ep as much as we did.
And why not join us for more insider goss and sneaky pics on our Facebook group called, strangely enough, She Wasn't Born Yesterday.
So jump on the socials and see you next time, or rather, chat soon.
Hope 103.2. Thanks for listening.